They are projected with 9.8 average wins, which is close to the top of the league, partly because they have one of the easiest schedules in the league. But they're actually projected 7th in DVOA. Remember, the Cowboys, I know we're all obsessed with their playoff loss, but their playoff loss was close, and it was to another really good top 10 team. They were the number 1 team in DVOA last year. Yes, there are questions about the wide receivers. Yes, the defense is going to decline because there's no way they get as many takeaways as they did last year. But this is still a really talented team that's good on both sides of the ball, that has a strong quarterback, and that faces an easy schedule.
Yeah, I mean, everything that you talked about, we kind of talked about in the chapter. We looked at the penalties, which is another thing that the Cowboys really went above and beyond on last year. They led the league, and that's not very sticky at all. That's something where we looked at it, the past 10 or so years of leaders. I think only the Seahawks repeated. So yeah, it's a situation where it seems like we're hitting regression, and we are a little bit to some extent, but they were also so good last year, but it doesn't really matter that much, and B, just that schedule is going to really help them, playing the AFC South, playing the NFC North, playing the NFC East. Like, there's a lot of games that, we talk about their defense, they can't get that many turnovers again. Well, if they play, Davis Mills again, they play a Daniel Jones that doesn't take a step forward, if they play Carson Wentz a lot, like, there's still some avenues there for me.
Yeah, avenues for lots of takeaways, definitely.
For me, for this team, it's trying to, very comfortable right at that place, probably in first place in the NFC East, almost certainly a playoff team. It's finding the breakthrough of the ceiling of the Packers, Buccaneers, Rams, and finding an excuse, reason, justification for blasting them through there. And it's hard to find one. They lost pieces on the offensive line. They lost pieces at wide receiver, lost pieces to injury at wide receiver. Again, we're looking at some regression and takeaways. How do you push past that first round playoff loss for this team? Can't get it from the coaching staff. You're not going to expect it on that end. Where do you get that juice that you need to make this not just another Cowboys season?
Yeah, and even if they push past the first round playoff loss, then they have to get through the second and third rounds, because I don't think that the Cowboys look like the kind of team that's going to get the number 1 seed. Tampa Bay really feels like the best team. And I mean, obviously lots of teams have the opportunity for the number 1 seed, but so then they have to make it through 3 rounds, and there are consistency questions, and there's coaching questions as always about Mike McCarthy. I do think that everybody is overrating last year's playoff loss and the history of the Cowboys. The Cowboys haven't made the NFC Championship game since 1995. Well, all I'm concerned about is the last 2 or 3 years. Anything that happened before Dak Prescott arrived means absolutely nothing to me. Thordain asked if there's some sort of measurement for the relationship of force-feeding touches to efficiency, which he calls the Russell Westbrook Index. I mean, I will say usually when guys have a higher sample size, they get closer to average on both sides. I mean, I don't feel like they force-feed Zeke. There is an argument that's been made that he had some injury issues last year and should be healthier this year. And there is the value, we don't have a stat for it, but there is the value of his pass blocking. He's very good at blitz pickup. So it's not quite to the point of, why don't they play Tony Pollard all the time? Zeke is toast. Zeke's not toast. He's another running back now. There are lots of them. His strength is blitz pickup. That's not the most notable strength for a running back, but it's useful.
When he tore his PCL, he had 26.1% DVOA, and if you stop the season in week 4. So, I mean, he wasn't bad when he was healthy. I think we just get exposed so much to the Cowboys because they're on pretty much every primetime game, every midday window, and we've all seen now 200 bad carries of Ezekiel Elliott falling down 2 yards past the line of scrimmage. Look, we've dealt with that. That's in our heads. That's how we picture him. I don't know that that's exactly fair. I think they kind of did him a disservice, honestly. But I do understand where that comes from, why we have 20 power troopers out there in mass. And I think he's better than what he showed last year.
Thordian might also have been talking about force feeding a receiver, like CeeDee Lamb might get force fed. Kind of like a Jarvis Landry situation. And I don't know if there's a metric for that. It's just that in the running game, if you're forcing the ball to the running game, a lot of times we can see that. And that's a Brian Schottenheimer or a Jarrett ordered this type of thing. The receiver's getting the touches. It probably because nobody else is open. They're the best option. So if they wind up being in this situation where they're getting a lot of 5-6 yard passes, it's probably not the receiver's fault that they're not being that efficient. It's like they need help. They're doing the best they can. They're getting open, catching the short pass.
DeAndre Hopkins had this happen where if we were charting how close is the coverage on every play, we would probably find a lot of plays where he was covered fairly closely and got thrown the ball anyway because it was like, well, DeAndre Hopkins is our only good receiver, so let's throw it up and see if he can make a play. Right. And that does drop your DVOA because you get a lot of incomplete passes that way, and it's likely that CeeDee Lamb is going to be in the same boat this year.
How did the Cowboys fare without Jerry Jones? And you wrote the chapter, Rivers. Can you conceive of the Cowboys without Jerry Jones at this point?
No, he is the Cowboys. I don't know how we can think about it that way, but I understand why people want to think about it that way because we've seen what we've seen at this point.
He is the general manager too, remember? So it's not just what is the effect of Jerry Jones, the owner and media personality. It's also what is the effect of Jerry Jones, the guy who picks the players. He is the general manager. He's
a better owner than Dan Snyder and the Haslams, and we could probably make a list of five or six others. And he tends to be him and Steven be a better general manager than the revolving door of the people those guys hire, probably because they meddle with them in some way. Obviously, we've seen very good people go through Washington, go through Cleveland, but like they trip on a banana peel when they walk in the door. So, for better or for worse, there's sort of a consistency of mentality with the Joneses that works, that like they bring some pluses to the table that you wouldn't expect to offset the weird minuses.
We talk a lot about the randomness of the draft, that there's some evidence that no general manager really picks any better than any general manager, or that at least if there is a difference between general managers, that it's small. Right. I don't think Jerry Jones is on the bottom of that list, though. It's not like the Cowboys are known for having way more high draft pick failures than other teams, and they do find some guys in later rounds like Dalton Schultz who become useful players. Like there's no evidence, I think, that Jerry Jones being the GM is this big ego trip that hurts the team.
Right. Yeah. They have a full scouting department that they do listen to some degree, that they keep firewalled out of the media spotlight, and money and food goes in and opinions come out. And I always joke, the mentality for Jerry is go get the big, strong, fast kid. They never overthink the draft. Like the guy like CeeDee Lamb, who he's a big, strong, fast kid, caught 1 million passes, go bring him in. Sometimes you see teams that, like, let's take the Jaguars, for example, that have gotten really into the 3-cone drill of some guy who only had 4 sacks or whatever, and they might make a mistake on that. Whereas the Cowboys' mistake, you can always look at the guy, like Manziel, look at the guy and say, well, I know why they drafted him.
They don't reach for guys. Right. Like the Cowboys are never a team where you go, wow, I didn't expect that guy to go for another 3 rounds. Right. Like they take guys where everybody expects them to be taken. And when they're wrong because everybody was wrong.
Yeah.
Listen, should not have drafted Ezekiel Elliott 4th overall, should not have given Ezekiel Elliott a big contract. Is Jerry Jones the only GM in the league who still is giving contracts to running backs and drafting them early? Dave Gettleman says hi. So I feel like it's not like an ego trip where we're like, oh man, if Jerry Jones would just replace himself, the Cowboys would suddenly be really good. Bill Houston asked, what is the win threshold for McCarthy to protect his job this year? I think he has to go to the Super Bowl.
Sean Payton time?
It's Sean Payton time. Everybody knows it. I think even if they make it to the playoffs and win a game, if they don't make it to the Super Bowl, Jerry can easily say, look, Sean Payton has won a Super Bowl. He's the man I want. It didn't work. Let's replace. It would be hard to replace a coach who just went to the Super Bowl.
Right.
But I think anything short of that, I think it's Sean Payton time.
Well, we just had the tampering thing the other day with the Dolphins, right? So, maybe there's a bidding war for Sean Payton.
I don't think that Jerry needs to tamper with Sean Payton. The tampering has been done in the past. Everybody knows the connection with these guys. Yes, Mike McCarthy won a Super Bowl too, but nobody likes the guy.
And it's next year. What kind of deal does Payton, non-compete deal does Payton have with the Saints? Next year, he's a free agent.
Next year, I think he's free.
Yeah. And if not, Jerry will throw a draft pick at Benson and a bit.
Element 65495 says Jerry hasn't made any offseason moves this year because he wants to make moves that Sean Payton wants next year.
That's one way to look at what happened there for sure, because definitely I think they're like second or third in cap space right now. Like they did not try to replace things actively. They took a very measured approach.
They did bring in Anthony Barr just now, who is a good little signing.
Yeah, that's a useful chess piece. Anthony
Yes.
Barr has always not played the edge as much as he probably should. So to have both him and Micah Parsons able to move around and play both the edge and the linebacker is a really interesting idea, but I don't know. We'll see.
By the way, Brian Knowles just reminded us that Mike McCarthy did win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's what I said. He's won it more recently than Sean Payton, but everybody wants to pretend that didn't happen.
It's this herbal tea I'm drinking. It affects my memory as to what's been going on.
You had some Dallas props for us, I believe, before we get to Washington.
Cowboys to not make the playoffs. As you might imagine, the money line to make the playoffs is pretty, like, there's not a lot of meat on the bone. If you're a disbeliever in the Cowboys to not make the playoffs, plus 195. Any takers?
Not enough for me. Not enough juice for me there.
Yeah, it's probably right on the verge based on our simulation, but I still feel like our simulation is a little too conservative. And with this schedule, I just feel like Dallas is going to make it somehow.
It feels too much like betting on the Cowboys to not make the playoffs is betting on Carson Wentz. And of course, I'm not going to do that. So let's go to another one. Cowboys over 11. Over 11. That seems very attainable. Plus 175.
I think I'd buy in on a small margin. Sure. I wouldn't put like $1,000 on it, but yeah, I would consider that one.
My sort of natural conservativeness doesn't want to go to over 11 with this team. I think I'd stay away from that.
It's 11, not 11 and a half. So you have,
you do get to push on the 11. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's tempting, but of course I have a personal rule about betting on the Cowboys doing well. So that means I'm guessing there are no disbelievers here because under 9. Now, by the way, these are all alternate win props available at DraftKings. I'm not just making this up. This is all at DraftKings. Under 9 wins for the Cowboys, plus 225. Any takers at all?
I think if I had to pick one of those 3 props, I would pick the miss the playoffs at plus. What was the miss the playoffs one?
Miss the playoffs was at plus 195, which is
because they could go 9-8 and miss the playoffs. I don't think they would miss it at 10-7, but they could go 9-8 and miss the playoffs. It's not necessarily betting on Carson Wentz because of my belief in the Eagles. It's more betting on like Trey Lance and Kirk Cousins because the idea
you're also kind of
keeping the Cowboys out of the wild card.
You're also kind of betting on the idea that Dak Prescott continues to get hurt no matter what every season.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Like if you happen to hit that correctly, then yeah, you've got a window for sure.
Well, Bill Houston has a question. Why do you think the Eagles are going to sneak off of the division? I'm curious too.
Yeah, I just really like all the talent that they've added. The projection system also really likes all the talent that they've added. It has them slightly ahead of Dallas on offense and with a slightly easier schedule, but the gap between their schedule and everybody else's, there's actually a little bit of a gap between Philly's schedule and all the other easy schedules in the NFC East. So I like the Eagles to do it. I like the Eagles to win the division. It's A.J. Brown and Hassan Reddick and James Bradbury and all the talent that they add. Look, Dallas subtracted talent.
Right.
And Philadelphia added talent. And yes, Dallas has the better quarterback. But when you look at the players around the quarterback, Philadelphia has it better.
Let me just say, we talked about Dallas for 30 minutes now, right? Nobody's brought up Parsons really. He's really good. He might be like so good that defense can't fail. That's kind of what I would bank on if I were being optimistic about them.
And no one's brought up who?
Micah Parsons.
Oh yeah, Micah Parsons is awesome. I mean, our projection for them on defense is still top 10 with Parsons, and Diggs is not going to have as many interceptions, but he's probably also not going to give up as many yards. He's probably going to regress in both areas, so he's still a useful player. Right. And Lawrence has got to play more games, very very likely. This should be a quality defense. There's no question about it. And on offense, they may have the receiver problems and the questions on the offensive line, but they have the quarterback. I'm a big Dak.
If we were writing, because we do all these offseason pieces about biggest holes and, what's the big pre-draft hole, what's the big post-draft hole. If we did this today, it'd be pretty obviously receiver because of the injuries. Yeah. But other than that, like I had a hard time this offseason really sitting down and being like, well, this spot's pretty weak. Linebacker's weak, defensive line is weak, cornerback is weak. And we kind of rotated them all because they all could be weak in like some weird situations. But like, it's a very solid Blue team.
The pass rusher other than Lawrence, if Micah Parsons is not lined up at edge, that other pass rusher is like Sam Williams is an interesting rookie, and Dorrance Armstrong is just a guy, and Dante Fowler never became what they wanted Dante Fowler to become. And I think the edge rush, if Parsons is not playing edge rusher, the edge rush is a question.
Quick pass to McCaffrey. Gets cut. First down into the secondary. Aaron Donald cannot be stopped.